Let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. I'm Luke Knight. Like I said earlier, I'm a territory manager for Corteva Agriscience in our crop protection business and a member of the Leadership Education and Development Committee within ASTA. And in collaboration with our student engagement contest and our International Women's Month, we're hosting a panel today with experts from across the seed industry to discuss the role of women in the seed industry and how a diverse and inclusive workforce helps increase innovation and commercial success. You're going to hear from very many different aspects of our industry, from R&D to commercial, from HR, and even a policy perspective. And I'm excited to moderate this discussion. And so enough about me. I'm going to push it over to our panelists to introduce themselves and then lead into the discussion. So Wendy, we'll start with you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this panel. I'm looking forward to hearing, really, this is going to be a great discussion from all of us today about the role of women in the seed industry. I've spent about 18 years working in the seed industry. The first 7 were actually spent in the European Union, and the last 11 I've been back in the US working in various aspects. I'm a researcher, R&D, and have been working both in the biotech aspects of the seed industry as well as breeding, and currently manage a group called Integrated Field Sciences, which is a field development organization for Corteva for our biotechnology, seed applied technology, and crop protection portfolios and product lines. So global group, many time zones, and many researchers doing great things to develop both seed and crop protection products for the world. So thank you.
Oswaldo, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Luke. I'm Oswaldo Lopez. I am the Global HR Lead for RiceTech Inc., based in Houston, Texas. I'm not happy to say that I have 36 years experience in human resources. I really feel old today. And 26 out of those, I've been in the agriculture. I started with Monsanto back in those days in Mexico, and then moved to Houston, Texas to work with RiceTech. I'm happy to be part of this panel. Hopefully we can learn together, and hopefully I am able to share a little bit of the experience that we have been doing in terms of this great effort to make the voice of you guys, of the woman in general, to be part of our business decisions. Thank you.
Risa?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marisa Demacy. Oswaldo, you beat me by 3 years of being in the industry. I've been in the seed industry for 33 years. I'm located in Salem, Oregon, one of the co-founders of Go Seed. We focus on breeding and research of cover crops, forages, turfs, and wildlife products. And I wear a lot of hats here, but probably most of my focus is on marketing and sales and a little bit of policy. I've served at ASTA for a number of years and was fortunate enough to be on their board. And yeah, it's an exciting topic, and I'm really glad to be part of this panel.
Thanks, Risa. Janae?
Morning, everyone. I am Janae Brady. I am currently the Senior Director of Government Affairs for the American Seed Trade Association. I came into the seed industry by way of my start of career as an English teacher, so I have kind of a unique path to where I am now. But after coming out to Washington, D.C. About a decade ago to do graduate school, I found myself back to my agricultural roots as a farm kid from Kansas, working in ag policy. Most recently, I worked with Senator Roberts, the chairman of the Senate Ag Committee, handling a variety of policy issues for him, but worked closely with the seed industry on issues like research and biotechnology and innovation and technology. So was thrilled to join the ASTA team in December, and I'm really happy to be with you all today.
Thanks, Janae. So how we'll do this, I've got several questions that I have directed to each of our panelists, and I'll direct some questions to the panelists, and when each panelist has had an opportunity to share, if they feel led to, we'll continue on the conversation. So Risa, I want to point one question to you. I remember you were the ASTA chair at my first ASTA meeting. So for me, my whole experience with ASTA, I've seen a lot of input and leadership from women. And I remember you discussing last week about how a seat at the table has always been hard, but looking in my eyes, I've seen that there's been a lot of progress. So I really want to ask you this question: is how important is diversity in women in the seed industry, and why?
Well, that's a big question, and I think it is important, obviously. So your first meeting at ASTA was also a first for ASTA. It was the first time in their history to have a woman in that position, and I feel really honored to have been able to serve in that capacity. I remember meeting with Krista Harden, who was at the time Deputy Secretary of Ag under Tom Vilsack, and one of the first things she told me is, you need to remember you're first but not last, and that's important, and that has stuck with me. Not that being first was that important, but not being last, and the importance of being able to share that experience and make that experience available for other people. And why is it important? Because we all come with different perspectives. If you look at nature, it's not a monoculture. I know in the ag industry, some of us work in some things that single crops, but diversity is incredibly important because it makes things stronger. If you think about, well, try to think of different analogies that would kind of bring that across, but you wouldn't want to eat one thing forever, and that's the only thing you got to eat. Life wouldn't be very full or rich, or wouldn't be a very good diet. In my sector of the industry, we focus on putting mixes and blends together to give genetic strength. There's strength in putting those combinations together, because if one piece fails, the other pieces will hold it up. From a business perspective, you're stronger if you have multiple perspectives. Otherwise, you can become tunnel focused and just see what you want to see coming with your own biases. And we do all come with our own biases. And that can be a positive or a negative, but using them for their benefits, I think is critical in creating a strong foundation for a business, for an industry, and for our future. I don't know if that answers it the way you were hoping, but that's my perspective.
No, I thought that was really good, Risa. One thing I heard you say was it's important to be first, but it's even more important not to be last. And I thought that was a really telling, a really important quote. So I remember that. Anybody else want to jump in and discuss why it's important to have diversity?
I think Risa answered it really well. I might just add that, the reason why diversity in companies is important is because we come with better solutions when we resemble our customers and the diversity that they have. And when you think about our customers in the seed industry are largely growers, how diverse they are. 43% of women, 43% of farmers globally are women. So we need to resemble them, because essentially we're bringing their perspectives then to the workplace and the way that we approach the solutions that we're developing. And I think also, there's data that goes behind the value of diversity in decision making too. Boston Consulting Group did a study back in 2017, really looking at different companies and the composition of their boards and their management teams, and found that the higher the level of diversity in those leadership and management positions, the higher the revenue coming from innovation. So those that have more diverse boards, management teams, had 19% higher revenue. So it makes business sense, and it makes sense to our customers to resemble what their makeup is.
Yeah, that's a good thought, Wendy. You know, we want to be able to reflect our customers that we're serving, because that's the best way to understand who our customers are. And I thought that was a good point. Anyone else? You know,
Talking about the customers, and I'm going to piggyback on Wendy's comment. I like to see things from the social perspective, but if we take a look on how our farmers are evolving and which are our customers, you see that the profile of the customer today is quite different from what used to be in the past. And I was trying to make an analogy or going back a little bit to the past. By the profile of our customers, maybe in the past it was pretty much appreciated, the relationship building. If we go and hunt together and we go and to see ourselves in the little league park together, and it was highly male dominated, you know. So when you have that profile of a customer, of course, if you are not sharing the hunting, the baseball, or those type of things, is difficult to fit with the profile customer, you know. However, the new profile of the customer is very structured, so much thinking about the finance. And we see today a lot of the wives or our farmers taking the lead on the decisions. So that has to be it's a provoking question, because what is going to be well received by the farmer when now the profile of the farmer is different? Now it's a better place, it's a better fit for females going into the industry, because they can make that connection, they can explain that better, and this is about knowledge today, not necessarily about relationships, you know. So I was thinking about that, but you know, I'm glad that I was able to contribute on that part of the customer.
Yeah, thanks, Oswaldo. I remember when we were talking last week, and you had mentioned that English was your second language, and how that really helped me understand a little bit more of how we communicate, learn from each other. And so I want to transition this to a question for you. What are some of the ways that you and Rice Tech have been successful in bringing in some of those non-traditional voices to your business?
Okay, it's a very interesting question, and in reality, there is not a specific formula to do that. But if I want to narrow it into something, I'm going to help with this. The first one is diversity. And you know, we normally use that word, and unfortunately or fortunately, we've been talking for years about this. My first project back in 1995 was about diversity, you know. So this is not something new. However, is the way we like to see it. And my recommendation always on diversity is this, is understand the value. If we're capable to understand the value of each individual in terms of what brings into the table, and that is translated in terms of behaviors, values, knowledge, skill, suddenly your head starts thinking differently, and you start fading what it has been draining us as diversity, as male, female, black, yellow, pink, Latin American. But when you start talking about contributions, when you start talking about what you bring into the table, diversity takes a different meaning. The second in my formula is inclusion. Okay. Now that if you find that someone has something to provide, has some value, invite them to the party. You know, what I'm calling here the business table. Let's call it to the business table. Let's bring your ideas and how you're going to be contributing what is unique from you and put it into the business. I was talking about this example of the profile of our customer. That might change. And so the people we bring into that party of the customer should be different. Also with inclusion, it comes things as accommodating. We need to accommodate ourselves with the different challenges that every individual has in order to contribute. Can be anything from family responsibilities, can be anything from personal responsibilities outside of work, even language skills. I like to say that, English is my third language, and intentionally, it's not a lie, it's a fact, but I have to recognize what I bring into the table and what I don't, and I surely don't bring grammar into the table. So don't give me a letter to review it. But I can bring you a different perspective from what I've been traveling all over the world. And I'm very good at understanding different cultures, So that thing is accommodate those type of things and invite the people to the party. And the last one, which I think is super sensitive and super important, and is my definition about equity. My definition of equity is be fair. And one formula I'm putting there is measure and reward based on contributions. It's not about age. It's not about, gender. It's not about nationality. It's not about seniority. It's about the contributions. So if you have two people performing at the same level and doing the same thing, is fair and is right to pay them the same. And I like to say this because particularly in the topic of this, on this panel, is about our female population at work. Unfortunately, and that's the reason I'm saying fairness, it's not fair for a person that have been in their entire career in a company and they've been having the merits, and I'm just gonna be talking about merits, 3% every single year for 10 years. Then you have our female peers that they have to stop for something, for a maternity leave or because they moved to another state with their husband or whatever. And that time is not measured. And normally they have a loss of income, not only because not working, but also they take what is available, not what they work for. So it is important to measure and stop thinking from the compensation perspective in paying in historical way, but paying in contribution on the moment. Of course, performance plays something, what I bring to the table, and commonly when you have more seniority, you have more chances to contribute better, Some of us, when we get older, we get lazier and maybe our contribution limited, but in reality, that happens. And it takes a lot of effort to break policies, to break practices, to break even taboos for doing this. I was sharing with the panelists last week that I have never done this that much, but during the past 2 years, we got into this fairness thing and we created a compensation system or a compensation structure based on deliverables or inequality, same roles, same contributions across the board. And I'm proud to say that I'm proud and not proud at the same time, but I'm proud to say that we identify gaps, significant gaps. The way we find the significant gaps was in our female population. So in order to put them on track, we have to give them, in some cases, 35% salary increases, which is not seen in my HR peers around the world, not in RiseTech, but in other associations. For them, that's not good, It's like a funny golden rule that does not exist. So breaking with those things is important because then you're doing the 3 things I'm suggesting to do. Diversity, which it means understand what we value, each of us, and contribute. Inclusion, put them into the table, and be fair. That was my little formula.
Thanks, Oswaldo. I think that's a good point. The first part saying and understanding the value. It's more than a metric. It's more than a specific number. It's really comes down to understanding the value of what everyone brings to the table. Anyone else want to add to that or respond?
Yeah, I want to share one last comment, and I can say it from what I've been called minority. I'm a Mexican, and I don't like that. I'm even very tall to be a minority. So, but something that we have to understand, something that we hate, and I don't know if that happens in general, but one of the studies that I did in the past is that you don't like to be considered that, and you don't want to be given positions or a title or an increase just to fill a quota or just because I am a minority. That's also, even from my own perspective, will be insulting. I would like to get paid for what I contribute, and if I don't contribute, you have all the right to kick me out of the door. But if I contribute well, I have the right to get paid well. And by using that mentality, again, you start putting, it's like the children. Children, they don't have to think about diversity. They think about, we'll play fun and we'll catch the ball. They don't see black, white, green, pink. They don't see nothing like that. It's we grown-ups. But when we start talking networking contributions, you stop thinking about the color, the skin. You have to follow universal values as respect, as care, as avoid profanity, but that applies to everyone, But when you concentrate on what you're bringing into the table for the good of all and for the good of the business.
Yeah. Thanks, Oswaldo. So Wendy, does Corteva have specific targets for inclusion and diversity, specifically for women? And also, how are you helping to bring them into that function?
Yeah, this is a great question, Luke, and we do, to be right out there. We are on a mission really to resemble our customers, and our organization should do that. We're committed to empowering women farmers as well as our women employees. We have strong internal support networks for our women. We have women, business resource groups that we can really sort of talk about the things that are important to women and work with our organization to advocate. So there's been changes in policies for maternity leave and family leave, in the last couple of years. But really right now, what we're focusing on is the numbers and actually moving the needle and committing to doing that. So we've made a lot of progress, but we are putting kind of a stake in the ground. Actually, in fact, tomorrow we'll be announcing specific ID&E goals and our journey that we're going to be on over the next few years. And really committing to increase by 2026, which is only a few years away, 5 years away, increasing our global female representation to 36%. And that's a 10% increase in just 5 years. And so big step. And there's also goals around racial and ethnic diversity as well. But this is something that we're being very transparent about, very open about, both with our employees and externally, that we are going to do this. And so, how are we going to do that? And, I can give you maybe an example of, my own group as I came into my current role. My group is a field-based group. And so you can imagine the demographics of a field-based group, mainly men. And we had a few women, and I kind of, through my career, worked in this space as well. And I was, I was always the one or the two that were there. I don't golf, I don't hunt, I don't particularly follow sports. And so, had to find find ways to communicate, to the point where, I could at least fake it. But, what we've actually tried to do in our group is, to try to go out specifically and find women. And how do we do this? It's not necessarily going and, going to schools and finding women and say, hey, come in, because what they find then is nobody looks like them. They aren't interested in the same things. So what we've actually done is kind of a small step in this way, is to, the females that we have put together just a kind of a chat social group that will engage with prospective students that are nearing graduation. In our case, we hire a lot of PhDs. And so these women, inviting them in their senior years to this chat, essentially to learn from the female scientists that we have that are in the field about what these kind of roles are like. How can they balance these roles, which are, somewhat traveling field, heat, weather, et cetera, with having a family, being able to pick up your child from daycare on time, going on maternity leave during the field season. How is that all handled? And so it's a very open discussion with our women field scientists who are doing those jobs. And what we've found over the last several years is those relationships and the fact that they know someone and we know them, the comfort level of actually considering, a role that in the past has been very much male dominated is increasing. So we've seen our numbers in the areas in our group that we've done this to start increasing. Our hires are more and more females. And not just bringing them in, but bringing them up the ladder and, building that deck. And so, over a few years, what we've actually been able to do is, even on my own leadership team, and it wasn't even intentional. This wasn't set out as a goal that I had wanted to achieve, but just that because of efforts of bringing talent in, developing them, making them feel included and relevant and contributing, we've actually been able to, and last year, my leadership team is now 50-50. It's 50% male, 50% women. And it was effortless. It was something that all of a sudden, as I was looking at my org chart one day, I just looked at it and I said, oh my God, we just did this. And it was totally effortless. And I can tell you that the discussions that we have at that leadership team are very open. They're very honest. There's many different perspectives coming there. We truly do have the diversity that we're looking for. So if my area, which is just a microcosm of the greater Corteva, and it's an area that has historically been dominated by men, can start making contributions to change the metrics in this space, then I'm really confident that as an entire Corteva, we're going to be able to meet that goal in 5 years. We're already well on our way, and we've got examples of how we've made that work.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. I call it from that mentoring and relationships. And I think that that's extremely important to think about is showing that you can and showing that there are people there to support and help any of our employees grow. And I think that's important in any business in any industry is understanding the mentoring and the relationships to share with people that you can achieve and you can do this. Anyone else want to add to this?
I would just add on the mentoring and communicating with other women and other folks in the industry that's really key from my experience of not just looking at your own organization, but talking to like-minded organizations and really building up those networks and creating those ideas. I mean, it struck me when you mentioned, not golfing and things like that. I've seen that those sorts of examples as a real hindrance of, where are the decisions getting made and who has a seat at the table. And sometimes you're not really aware of those things until you really communicate with the broader other not just women, but other people in other organizations and how they approach things. So really being able to establish those networks and brainstorm together on ways to build everyone up, I think is really critical.
Yeah, thanks, Janae. You know, we in the industry, we have these goals and we have these aspirations to really be impactful in the space. And I know um, Wendy laid out a few things, but we're not the only ones. And so, Janae, how do we ensure that our political and our policy field represents the diverse voices in the seed industries, and also seeing the work that we're working on and trying to get to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not just enough to have women in your industry, but you need to have women leadership in your industry, and you need to have women that are really able to rise to leadership opportunities, to have a even greater, voice in their industry. And that's not just within the organizations, but it's in DC, looking at actual political levels. And we've had recent glass ceilings being broken, with our recent vice president being the first woman in that position, as well as many other firsts that she broke. But if you look across the cabinet, we're really excited to have Catherine Tai as a female U.S. trade representative, and having women in those positions are really critical, because they help drive policies. And as you all talk about the policies that you're establishing in your companies, I've been able to see federal policies that have really had an impact across the board. I think about my nieces that have grown up in sort of the era of STEM, and they are really being pushed to pursue science and math and technology in a way that I certainly was not when I was growing up. And it just really thrills me to see those sorts of policies that are being driven across the board at the local, state, federal level. So it's really critical to have that opportunity. And then sort of back to the networking comment that I made earlier, from the specific ag industry and seed industry policy in DC, or that arena. When I first started on Capitol Hill several years ago, I was brand new, didn't know anyone, and was in an entry-level position. And one of the first events that I was invited to was a Women in Ag event. And being sort of a stranger to the field, it was just really inspiring to see women across the board. I mean, you had staff assistants and you had political appointees. You had everyone all together talking about their jobs and networking with each other. And that event still exists, and the positions that the women have had have changed, and there's been a lot of opportunity to sort of help each other and help create new leaders in different fields by just constantly supporting each other and building each other up. And I think you see that not just in DC, of course, at state organizations and some of the opportunities that they provide. And I just think opportunities like that and creating opportunities like that are really important for the future.
Piggyback on what Brady said is also at the corporate level or at the company level, providing the opportunity to lead projects, to lead specific initiatives. That is important. There is nothing better to build leadership than by being exposed. Since leadership is a evergreen process, you need to constantly have that exposure. So what I was talking to what Brady said, breaking that glass ceiling is also breaking the opportunity ceiling. I mean, those opportunities should be available for all, but also sometimes you don't necessarily give it to the best qualified person. You also can give it to the person that you want to develop, because it's unfair just always give it to the person that knows how to do it, and how are you going to be developing the others that can't. And if we as a company, as Wendy said, we have a metric and we want to make it more accessible to everyone, you have to make these opportunities available and provide the resources. I mean, you don't put people to fail, you put people to succeed. So if I'm going to give you a project, you have not ever been in a project where I might be mentoring you, I might be training you in project management, and I'll be behind you for you to be successful. But we have to make sure that these opportunities are given to those who we want to develop, not only to the ones that can do it.
I think that's a good point, Oswaldo. Risa, have you seen women in ag adapt and evolve over the course of your career?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I think as Janae and Wendy have both said, mentioned, and Oswaldo as well, you know, when I first started in the industry, and especially in my sector, that when I started going to meetings, you could probably count the women on one hand, just that were there. So there weren't a lot of role models. There weren't a lot of people to go to. I didn't have the opportunity to have mentors in the way I think are available today. And seeing people adapt, it's been really fun and rewarding and encouraging to see. You know, ASTA had the Fuse program, so they would match up industry people with, you know, students coming in, and it has been so exciting for me to see some of those that were students now that have been in the industry, developing some really powerful careers. I think that's amazing and fantastic. And, you know, while I didn't have some of those opportunities, I can say there were some really wonderful people who came alongside me and were encouraging. And, you know, as Oswaldo said, gave me those opportunities, you know, saw the potential to give me those opportunities to try things. And I think that is one of the great things about the agricultural industry. You know, as Janae said, you know, when you come into ag, it was kind of exciting because there is all this diversity there, and it is more welcoming. I think, you know, do we have work to do? Absolutely. But I think that's the case no matter what you do in life. There's always an opportunity to improve. But the foundation is there, and the people are so wonderful. And I don't, you know, of all the board meetings I went to, I felt like I was drinking from a fire hose trying to learn the entire industry. And the acronyms were, I thought I'd never figure everything out or be able to hold a decent conversation, you know, having a seat at the table to be able to contribute. And I think that's what people want, is to be relevant, as Oswaldo said, and to be able to contribute. I think, Wendy, you mentioned that too. But, you know, on those side conversations at those meetings, there's nothing like, you know, just being able to ask the person next to you, or have those side conversations and say, you know, I'm not understanding this. Can you help me? Not once did I ever have somebody say, well, what are you doing here? How come you don't know what that is? In fact, it was funny. The person sitting next to me, when I saw all those acronyms, I thought, I'm never going to understand that. He leaned over and asked me, he goes, do you know what all these mean? Which made me feel so much better. You know, it's been a great opportunity to be in ag. I think I have seen so much change in the last 3 decades. It's really a wonderful place to be. I think we're fortunate. But again, that doesn't mean that we stop doing what we're doing. You know, Wendy, I think it's so great that you said the effort was flawless. It wasn't even really an effort. And yet I think you did apply some effort because you were conscious of it. I think when we're conscious of wanting to see change or to grow, that's half of it, you know, listening and really being really desiring to grow, whether that's personally, business-wise, industry-wise, and people are watching. I mean, Oswaldo, to your comment, the audience, we've seen in agriculture how consumers are changing what we do and how we do it. It used to be, and things change. It was all about, well, the science says this, or this, you know, the science is driving this. Well, it's not working that way anymore. We're finding that people want that transparency, and it's probably in part because we as a society, we're so far away from where our food comes from, where things come from, that they want to know, and they want that sincerity and that transparency, and they're watching, and they're pretty quick to pick up emotionally whether what you say is genuine. I mean, they're not always right, but their intentions are good, I think. And if we can understand that, we are who we are the cultures that we develop in businesses, personally, industry-wide. Knowing that makes us stronger. And I think there are so many opportunities. I guess I'll leave it at that, but I have seen a lot of change, and it's been a wonderful change.
Piggyback on what Risa is saying, talking about transparency, also that transparency internally. When you put available those opportunities for growth and development and see this is the company's expectation, you don't put it in a black box, you put it available to everyone, then you have surprises. And then you have is like, so this is not given to the one that somebody pointed out. This is given to one that is capable. And in sociology, there is a theory about the power of teams. When a team is working together for a common goal, and they clearly understand the contributions of each of the members, you don't need a lot of effort to include people or exclude people, because normally it's aligned to a goal. So the teams itself, they make the decisions who are the ones who are part of this group based on the contributions, not based on your title, not based on the structure, but based on your contributions. But putting that available and transparent to everyone, it's a fantastic tool, because you give the ownership of development and opportunity to the person itself. You don't give it to the manager, you give it to the director, you give it to the person itself, and it's up to each individual to take it or leave it. And then you will see that, of course, groups that they have been left behind on the past for whatever reason, they start taking these opportunities, because there is a common denominator on any human being, which is progression. We all want to be better. Everybody has different standards, but we all want to be better. So it is beautiful when you start seeing and breaking the mold and saying, I was thinking this person was interested on this, when in reality not. That person just wanted to be closer to retirement and retire the sooner the better, while the other is like, no, I want more, because I know that I can contribute. You start seeing things that I learned this before, I did this in my past, and like, wow, I mean, I never knew about that. Let's bring it into the table. Going back to my formula, it is contributions and value that every person brings.
Thanks, Oswaldo. So Wendy, what are some of the biggest opportunities that we see in the seed industry for women?
I think that this industry probably has the most skin in the game of solving our collective global challenges for the next 20 years. And when you think about what those are, I mean, by 2050, we're going to add another 3 billion people to this planet. At the same time that we can all see that things are changing with the climate. And so the challenges there are tremendous in terms of what we holistically as a seed industry and as agriculture need to change. Diets are changing as wealth changes and countries that are developing. So the challenges are absolutely there in this industry. So, those women who are up for contributing to something super important, there's going to be an infinite number of opportunities. I think what's the biggest opportunity is just to bring their own perspective and whatever their interest is to this challenge. And women, as all human beings, all have different skill sets and perspectives on this, but instead of approaching, this challenge with a set of sort of trying to fit into the mold, just bring your full self to these challenges, your perspective that you gain by running a household, having a family, where you grew up, what you've seen in your own community work, bring those to the table instead of as you come to the table trying to conform with the discussion that's at the table. Personally in this space, I probably take a bit of a different perspective on a lot of things. I grew up on a farm. I have a younger sister, 2 years younger than me, that grew up on the same farm. I went to Big Ag, and I'm just totally jazzed up about doing big things and research to impact agriculture on a global scale. That's what motivates me. She, on the other hand, same parents, 2 years apart, moved to North Carolina, bought some land, and her husband are organic farmers, and they make their livelihood by selling their produce that they grow with their 6 kids on the farmers market every weekend. We are both bringing our full selves to work, but very, very different career paths. And honestly, you can look at that as, wow, that's totally divisive. How can you guys even talk to each other? But it's the most natural thing, honestly. I have all the respect in the world that she's organic. That's the way she wants to contribute to this challenge. I work in the development of crop protection chemicals that she doesn't use. But when we talk and we call each other every week, our conversations are around, what is going on in each of our lives. She'll ask me, how can I control these pests, these bugs without, and I know I can't recommend a product to her because she doesn't use that. So we have to think creatively about how to solve those challenges. So not to bring sort of a divisive, stance to our roles, but bring our true selves to how we solve these problems. And I think women uniquely, because we do really want to collaborate and understand different perspectives and other ways to solve than being told, here's the solution, go implement it. So I think the biggest opportunity, honestly, is for women to engage in these areas in the seed industry, wherever they have that passion, and bring their true selves to work, not trying to conform to something that they think fits that mold.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. I took from that we've all got to come together and lift up all aspects of our industry and be supportive of how we are to feed the world, continuing and going forward. We are in the last few minutes of our conversation, and I want to leave with one last question directed towards each of you guys. With your different perspectives, I want to know in 2 minutes from each of you, what are we doing well, and what can we improve? And Janae, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well, I mentioned that I just joined the ASTA team in December, so have only been working directly with the seed industry for a few months, but I stepped into an office that is predominantly women, with a lot of really strong, leaders and voices, both as staff and our, as Risa pointed out, our membership, our board. So I think the seed industry is doing a lot of things well, that we could really talk about. I think it's probably a little bit repetitive from what we've talked about, but the mentorship aspect is really just the absolute key, and starting at an early age, I think, is important. I mean, I know ASTA is involved in a lot of organizations and groups for college students and for really getting in front of folks early. And even though I was a farm kid from Kansas, I didn't have an FFA in my school. I went to an ag college, but I really didn't know the opportunities that existed beyond working on the farm until I stumbled across them in DC. And had I known, that this was out there, I probably would have fought my way to get here even earlier. So being able to really get in front of, I think, the youth is really, really critical, and showing them the opportunities that are out there. But then you really do have to focus on that mentorship aspect. I think I've been really impressed and amazed to see young women, young professionals in particular, that step into this field with a confidence that I just absolutely did not have at their age. And it's really enlightening to see. On that same vein, as someone who's been mentored and tries to pay that forward in a lot of ways, I might be the only person with this character flaw, but I've also been taken aback by some of that, to sort of think, who does this person think they are? They didn't work as hard as I had to work when I first got into this field. And I really had to take a step back and just appreciate the confidence that they have, and try and take that with the understanding of there's still a lot of growing to do. There's still a lot of learning to do. And I think we who have been in the industry for a little while really have to step up to that responsibility to foster what these young professionals are coming into the industry with. So to wrap, I think there's been a lot of really great examples, and we certainly have a lot of work to do moving forward.
Thanks, Janae. Wendy?
You know, I think since we're on the theme of diversity, I'll put diversity in a little bit different perspective. I think about, you know, the 2050 challenge a lot, and the role of seed in solving that challenge and our genetic resources as a whole. I think that, you know, we have made tremendous improvement of the crops that we generally work in, and you can see that and the benefits that that's brought to developing our planet. But we need to really keep an eye on 2050, both in terms of preserving diversity within our seed, that's going to be like the lifeline of our industry as a whole, but also that diversity, which is going to enable us to feed that world. You know, the crops and the seed that we are currently using and selling and working on, you know, when you look at the challenge that we have, they may need to change as well. And so being very forward thinking, I guess, rather than just thinking about right now, because genetic improvement of seeds is not a one-year task. This is decades of work to do that. So I think about that a lot. And I think that women in particular in that, coming into that realm, there's a tremendous amount of possibilities. And whether you're interested in the research as I am, or more of the business aspects or the policy aspects or sustainability aspects, or how these translate to consumers, there is room for everyone. But I think for me, you know, we've done a tremendous job getting to where we are, but let's not lose sight of 2050 and what that looks like.
Thanks, Wendy. Oswaldo, what's a glow and a grow? What are we doing well? Where can we improve?
Well, my first insight is use this roundtable. You know, I mean, just by starting the conversation, sharing ideas, understanding that this is a common problem or a common issue that we have to tackle, and some have been going one way and have some successful stories, some other being one other way with success stories, and how to blend them for the good of the industry. You know, I really like what Wendy said about, you know, her sister, and you know what, it is interesting because we all have the same goal. I think the seed industry, it is the great place to be in general terms, which my 3 daughters and my 2 boys, they want to study agriculture. But the point is that we are in the right place. I think that we're doing a lot of things even better than other industries, you know, because we believe in the value, you know, we also care, we are accommodating. So I think that seed industry has not only a lot to offer by itself and growing through this type of interactions, but also sharing. I don't know, I mean, in Houston, in the oil and gas, you don't see many female VPs or female CEOs, and I hate to say it this way, when I go to an HR meeting, it is kind of like sometimes it's even the boys club, you know, and that's not the true representation of who we are as a society. I think that even with our challenges as seed industry in agriculture, we are paving the way for others to follow us. So I think we're in a great place. Can improve, of course, but we have the raw material to do it.
Thanks, Oswaldo. Risa, I'll end with you. What are we doing well? Where can we improve?
I think we've established that we're doing really, really well, that the opportunities exist. Can we improve? Yes. I think where we can improve probably, and Oswaldo kind of hit it, it's still sometimes when you go to meetings it feels like, I said, the old boys club, but I think we've moved a little bit beyond that. And yet I think sometimes we still look at things with our own biases. We think, well, there aren't the women that are qualified to sit at the table. And I think they're there. We just need to be open-minded and intentionally find them. You know, I think one of the panelists said earlier, it's not that it's not a numbers game. It's finding those qualified people that are going to contribute and are relevant, and they're there. We just need to be intentional about looking for them and finding them and putting them in those places and giving them those opportunities. Janae, I loved how beautifully said some things about, and I don't think you're alone, coming in and being a little intimidated or, by when you first step in. I think that's natural. I'm still intimidated by people like you, and Wendy and Oswaldo. I'm learning all the time, and there's still role models for me to look to and admire, of all age groups, to see how people quickly are easily stepping in on both feet and grounded and confident, which is something that I've always struggled with. But I can learn from that. And I think something else that I've seen as women, and maybe earlier on, as we were first finding our feet and getting those seats at the table, is we're trying so hard that we're looking at ourselves. And I think creating those opportunities for other women to come in, looking at, being intentional, looking for them, helping them find their way, as opposed to being inward looking at our own self-consciousness, and lifting them up. Because I think we can lift the ship, if all waters rise, all ships rise. So I think there's a lot of truth in that. I can do better.
Well, thanks, Risa, and thank you to our panelists. Each of you are outstanding leaders in the seed industry, and I personally appreciate your insights across the board, and especially on this topic. I've been in the industry for 4 years, and I wouldn't be in this industry if it wasn't for my ag teacher and FFA advisor, who was a woman. And she was one of the first at the time, and I thought that was odd, but now, almost 10 years later, I realized that wasn't odd at all. And so for somebody who's young in the industry, I see the work that a lot of folks have done to get us here, and I'm excited to see where we can go. Mentorship, inviting people in, listening actively. How do we think forward? Starting the conversation and just being open-minded is some of the things I learned today. And I think that's something, all of those aspects are something we can use in our individual capacities in our organizations. I thank you all for the time today. Thank you for the attendees for spending this hour with us. I know you have many things to do today, and I really appreciate the time that you took in promoting women and diversity in the seed industry. I'm excited about the tremendous opportunity that we have, and I look forward to working with you all together on this. So with that, I'll give you a couple minutes back. We'll close the session, and I hope you all have a great and safe day. Thank you again.